Okay, it's 4:30, so I will call this meeting to order. Mayor Lau will be joining us by Zoom tonight as he is out of town, and as acting mayor, I'll be chairing. First, I'd like to acknowledge that the District of Tofino operates within the territory of the Tla-o-qui-aht First Nation. I have a notice to attendees that the meeting is being video recorded and will be published on the District of Tofino YouTube channel. Also, a notice to virtual attendees to sign up for public comment and question period using the question and answer function in Zoom. To register, participants are required to enter their full name, residential address, and the agenda item they wish to speak to. Then we have approval of the meeting location, and I'll move from the chair the recommendation that pursuant to section 15 of the District of Tofino meeting procedure bylaw number 1229, 2016 as amended, the June 25th, 2024 regular meeting be held electronically via Zoom and live broadcast on the District of Tofino's YouTube channel, and that the facility provided for the public to watch and hear the meeting be located at the Municipal Hall, 380 Campbell Street in Tofino, BC. And I'll look for unanimous consent on that. And if there's no objection, that motion is carried. Seeing none, that's carried. I'll also move and look for unanimous consent on the adoption of the agenda. So I move that the June 25th, 2024 regular council agenda be adopted. And if there's no objection, that will be carried. Seeing none, that's carried. And we have the consent agenda items 4.1 through 4.6. Did anyone want to lift any item from that? Okay, seeing none, I'll read the recommendation that items 4.1 to 4.5 of the consent agenda on the regular council meeting held June 25th, 2024 be approved and received. If there's no objection, that will be carried by unanimous consent. Seeing none, that's carried. And next we have minutes to adopt. First being the minutes of the Council Grants Standing Committee held June 6, 2024. And again, I'll move the recommendation that pursuant to Council Grant Policy, the committee recommends to Council that the following recipients for the 2024 Council Grant Program be awarded as follows. BC Association of Surf Instructors, $2,700. Tla-o-qui-aht Action Doing Democracy, $2,500. Tla-o-qui-aht Action Tofino Adventure Film Festival, $2,500. Tla-o-qui-aht Sound Community Theater Association, $2,500. And Tofino Saltwater Classic, $2,500. And I'll look for a second on the recommendation. Second by Councillor Thomas. Any discussion on that? Okay, all in favor? Motion's carried. And also move that the Council Grant Standing Committee recommends to Council that the remaining funds of the Council Grant budget totaling $32,979 be released through a second call for grant applications in 2024. Is there a second? Second by Councillor McMaster. All in favor? Motion's carried. And also move that the minutes of the Council Grant Standing Committee held June 6, 2024 be received. Second by Councillor Slovan. All in favor? Motion's carried. And We now have opportunity for public comment on agenda items, 10 minutes total. If anyone's attending by Zoom, again, a reminder to use the Q&A function. Mr. McCall, is anyone signed up? And could you make an open call?
Thank you, Chair Anderson. Yes, we have one person signed up. So I will ask that anyone in the gallery, if they wish to make a public comment, now is the time to do so. So you can raise your hand, you'll state your name, your address, and the agenda item you're speaking to. You can proceed to the podium. You have 2 minutes to speak.
Hi, my name is Scott Payne, 625 Nielsen Place. I'll be speaking on agenda 10.3. I believe I have 2 minutes or so to.
Yep.
Correct. I should start by clarifying the misinformation on our TUP notice. We have had the zoning to operate a 3-bedroom short-term rental on our property for the last 3 years. We volunteered to give it up while being guided by staff to believe that we would be able to continue to operate as legal non-conforming while providing our town with 2 family-sized lots. It feels like an obvious compromise in which the province has given you full ability to do. This TUP is transitionary for us as we are moving forward with a rezoning application. Needless to say, we should not fall into the same category as every other applicant. The option to create a covenant preventing us from operating a short-term rental was offered to mayor and council, and that never happened. The town hall messaging was that there was no option with the removal of legal non-conforming. We challenged that and confirmed that permissions can be written in at the local level, as we saw Ucluelet do for their community. Dan, you emailed saying provincial changes were made public before our last hearing, but even the province was unclear of the details as shown in an email to us in March. So how could we have been even clear in February? That would be unreasonable to expect. We sent a note to all of you in which our CAO responded that she did not provide certain comments. We feel this unfairly compromised not only the integrity and honesty of me and my family, but also our application. Unfortunately, we were unable to defend ourselves as somebody immediately blocked us from communicating with all of our elected officials. It shouldn't be a surprise that I record every conversation I have with the district. We have been honest and transparent with our intentions from the very beginning. We now personally understand why there is no confidence in those leading our town. I've traveled illegal short-term rentals for council members and a mayor. There is an outright lack of integrity, accountability, and concern for the best interest of the tax-paying citizens in this town. We have no confidence in the outcome of this application, but hope that each of you use this as an opportunity to think deeper about the decisions you are making and how it affects all of us who call Tofino home. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Chair Anderson, I will now do another open call to the gallery or anyone on Zoom who is wishing to speak.
Good afternoon. My name is Mr. Booking. I live at 411 Campbell Street, and I'm here for regarding the property of 381 Main Street. I own the property on Main Street, just behind the village office. It is zone commercial, and I have tenants.
Mr. Bouquet, are you speaking to an agenda item?
No, but I was told that I could come and present my my case today.
Okay.
Without
Who told you? Because the public comment period is just for items on the agenda. So I'm just
but I
wondering,
was told I could come today and talk about that and take 2 minutes also to
by staff member or council member?
yes.
Do we know anything about that?
I'm not aware, no.
To the chair,
Yes.
Mr. Gopi contacted me today to ask about the process, and I wasn't sure that wasn't on the agenda item.
Oh, okay.
It was a very short call, so that's on me.
Okay, okay. Apologies.
Sorry, we'd need a vote of council to allow it, I think, at all. I'm not sure what's the procedure, or we just can't allow it
We
and
can't allow,
another opportunity somewhere?
yeah, what we can do is we can have staff reach out to the speaker today, and we can find an alternative date or an alternative way for for them to get their message to council, but unfortunately, we can't do it through council resolution, given council's meeting procedures bylaw.
I'm sorry about this, but we have to stick to our procedure. So if you could if we could get staff to reach out and talk to you, and then we'll find the right channel for you to be able to speak on your issue.
I understand that the staff is gonna go on a holiday here in July. Everybody's busy in summer. I'm also very busy. I came here, I've got 2 minutes to read here. I would like the council to listen my concern, and I have a letter for each one of you. You can read, and it's attached pictures and comment from some of the tenants in this town. I've been here for 40 years. I haven't been treated the way I'm treated right now, so I'd like to speak, if it's possible, make an exception for this time.
Can I recommend that recess be called and we can refer to the procedures bylaw? We'll need about 5 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I will call a recess then, and we'll just have to look at our procedures bylaw to see how or if we can hear you today. I would like to make an exception, but we have to make that exception for everyone if we make it for you. So, yeah.
They already make an exception for me. I explained everything in this letter.
Maybe we can start by looking at everything that.
Recess now, so staff are gonna have a look at the procedures. Well, refrain from.
The meeting will resume at 5:46. Call the meeting back to resume from recess. At this point, the best we can do is how do you just distribute the letter to council, but we won't be able to let you speak. The reason is there's a number of things in our procedural bylaw that we need to be able to know what you're speaking about to be able to respond at all. And that's why it's restricted to items on the agenda. So that's the best we can do right now, is to have you distribute your letter. Staff will be reaching out to you based on whatever
6 months.
matter you
Mayor?
forward. Yeah. And there may be another opportunity at a future meeting to speak to council. Sorry about that.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. McCall, do we have any other members of the public
I will
lined up for asking to speak?
Thank you, Chair Anderson. I will do one more call to the public for comments. If you wish to make a comment on the agenda, you may do so by raising your hand either via the Zoom Q&A or in the public gallery. I'll now do an open call going once, twice, or 3 times. There is no further public comment, Chair Anderson.
Okay. Mayor Lodge, did you have a mayor's report today?
I can thank you, Chair. I can save that for when I'm chair.
Okay. All right, we'll move on to delegations, and we have Rebecca Hurwitz via Zoom. And this is the Clayoquot Biosphere Trust Executive Director, I believe is the title, and it's a general update and presentation, and we, I think, have received, we all have the annual report before us. So have we got Rebecca on Zoom somewhere there?
Yes.
Hello, Councillor Anderson. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. And I don't know if I'm able to turn on my video or if that's just not possible, which is okay. I just.
We can see your screen.
Okay.
Yeah, you're sharing your screen, but we don't have your video. Are you unable to turn your video on? We might need to.
It said that the controls wouldn't allow me to, but you don't necessarily need to see me by any means. I just wanted to do everything I could. So if it's not usual, that's okay.
I should have shared those permissions now with you, Rebecca.
Okay, I can't seem to find the button. It's, oh, let's try. Oh, there we go.
There you are. Okay, great.
Awesome. Thank you very much for taking the time today. I'm here to share an update from the CBT, sort of an annual update. My name is Rebecca Hurwitz, and I'm the Executive Director of the Tla-o-qui-aht Biosphere Trust, and I'm joining you from Q&amp territory today. We held our AGM last week, and so I thought I'd just share a few highlights from our annual report. And I'm really grateful to Nyla, who was able to take some hard copies, I think, to your meeting. And so I hope you'll have a chance to have a closer look and to pass those hard copies along to a colleague or friend after that. So a bit about the CBT. We are your local community foundation, as well as the steward of the Clayoquot Sound UNESCO Biosphere designation. I'm very grateful to all of our volunteers, but I work most closely with the board members, and those are individuals that are appointed to the board by the 5 First Nations, the District of Tofino, the District of Q&amp, and the Area C of the ACRD. But we have more than 60 volunteers who participate on various grant committees and project committees. And our mission is to assist the communities of the Biosphere region by providing funding and logistical support for community well-being, reconciliation, education, conservation, and sustainable development. I'd especially like to recognize Mike Davis and Nora Proudfoot, who are the director and the alternate director appointed to the CBT by the District of Tofino. They both send their regrets today as they're unable to join me due to work and personal commitments. Mike is just wrapping up his first 4-year term with the CBT, and we're really grateful to him for his forestry background and experience. And he's most recently served as our treasurer on the board. And then Nora has been really involved. She's on her 2nd term with the CBT and really actively engaged in our education award process. So yeah, a big thank you to them both. Yeah, I just thought I'd focus on a few highlights in different priority areas, and the first being sustainability research and education. So we published our 5th Vital Signs report last year, and that was the first time that we had an advisory committee process to help guide the research and identify new focuses in the report, which included truth and reconciliation and infrastructure and sustainability. We also launched an online data hub for the first time, and we're really focused on making the data that we use in the report open and accessible, and we'll do our best to keep updating that online hub between reports. This fall, we'll be hosting Vital Conversations using the data. Most recently, we hosted a Vital Conversation on coastal safety, co-hosted with Pacific Rim National Park Reserve. And we'll also be calculating an expanded living wage later this fall. The West Coast NAST Education Tourism Initiative continues to grow and recover post-COVID. And in last year, we've been very focused on providing coordination services for visiting school groups and field schools, as well as delivering education programs and events for tourists. During COVID, our focus shifted to supporting local youth and local organizations, and we're really grateful to the District of Tofino for support for a youth outdoor guide interpretation course, as well as skills training and certification courses for USS students. In the area of conservation, CBT is currently delivering a 5-year project focusing on enhancing biodiversity conservation efforts in the region with funding from Environment and Climate Change Canada. This is part of a national project with 19 biosphere regions across the nation. Our goal is to provide support for stewardship, restoration, and conservation in ecologically important areas, which are being recognized as contributing to national and international conservation targets. And these include Indigenous protected and conserved areas. Last year, we were really excited to partner with the Sitka Foundation to support 3 significant Indigenous-led stewardship and restoration projects in Clayoquot Sound. And these projects contribute in a very small way to the newly announced conservancies. And on behalf of our team, I'd like to extend my congratulations to everyone that's involved in that new legacy. Last year, we also hosted the first BC Biosphere Gathering. So there's 3 biosphere regions in British Columbia, the Akatsum Howe Sound Biosphere and the Mount Arrowsmith Biosphere. And so great to host them in our region. And we hosted our first regional forum, so bringing together stewardship and restoration organizations. More than 65 folks participated with a focus on environmental research and sustainable development. They met again this spring, and thank you to Mayor Law for attending. We plan to continue to host those twice a year. Our work in youth empowerment has grown significantly in recent years with the leadership of Jason Sam. Last year, our Youth Advisory Council provided $12,000 in grants to youth-led and youth-serving projects, and we're really grateful to the ACRD for that support. We've expanded our Education Award program to include a Lifelong Learner Award, and we also offer a paid youth internship program in the summer. Jason also has worked really closely with Q&amp Secondary School and the Legacy of Hope Museum to host an exhibit called the Truth, Honor, and Way Forward exhibit at Q&amp Secondary School. Last year, 9 different classes worked on projects focused on understanding the impacts of the Canadian Indian Residential School Program or school system, and then shared all of their learning with the community on September 30th. And we were able to also co-host that display at the Visitor Center in Tofino, and are already planning on something similar this year. That partnership is continuing to grow. So yeah, looking forward to that. In terms of granting, the CBT works really hard to be a responsive and trust-based local funder. And last year, we provided the highest value of grants in our history, over $955,000 in grants, ranging from $50 up to $20,000 for 119 local projects. So of the 47 organizations funded, I'm really excited to share that 9 of those were new organizations. And that's a result of changes within the CRA granting guidelines for foundations. And we worked really hard to respond to those new guidelines. And for example, in Tofino, one of the organizations we're able to fund with the new guidelines is the Tofino Community Food Initiative, which was previously ineligible because they weren't a charity. And in addition to the Canada Fund, which provides a lot of the funding for our grants, we're home to 12 community funds, and those grants or those funds provided over 30 grants in all areas of activity. So big thank you to the donors that work with us to support their philanthropic community work. I'd like to recognize all of the contributions that CBT grant recipients make to the UNESCO Biosphere designation. Supporting projects like these is one way that we work together to achieve our shared mandates. And I hope you'll take a chance to look at the project lists, all of the different projects that were funded last year included in the report. I wanted to take the opportunity to provide an update on the Biosphere Center as well, a unique regional project. The CBT purchased the property at the top of Wilson Road in 2019, and last year we had a lot of continued momentum. The Biosphere Center will bring the region together to advance all areas of our work, including reconciliation, youth empowerment, climate action, and biodiversity conservation. Just a quick review of some of the key features within the building. At the Campbell Street level, there will be a visitor center area, library and archives, an elders room, research and office space, as well as 2 residential units that are guided or managed with a housing agreement with the district. And then the top floor includes a teaching and educational space that's a flexible space that can be used for meetings and programs, as well as a culinary teaching kitchen, able to deliver food security, food preservation, and culinary training programs in partnership with North Island College, for example. I thought to highlight just 2 of the, two aspects of the center, one being sustainability. We're focused on achieving what's called the Living Building Challenge, a sustainable building framework. And perhaps of interest to the district is that we are planning for rainwater collection and treatment on site with the goal to be able to offset demand during the summer from the building. And in terms of inclusivity, we really are focused on ensuring that the Biosphere Center is a safe and welcoming space for all. So inclusivity has been front of mind in our design, and really grateful for input from our Accessibility Committee, as well as the Coastal Queer Alliance and Tla-o-qui-aht appointees to the Project Development Committee. I shared with Nyla just yesterday the social and environmental procurement policy that CBT has developed, and so that will guide us in our next steps towards construction. Just a few updates in terms of the overall project status. We're working on our last phase of work pre-construction, and so we're completing our construction documentation in preparation for applying for a building permit, and we're hoping to start construction next spring with potentially completion in late 2026. It's a $15 million project, and we've raised $9.6 million, and our focus right now is on seeking provincial support for the project. So we're working with various ministries, but being an election year, it's a tricky time, most definitely. We've requested a letter of support for a $200,000 application to ICE-T, the Islands and Coastal Economic, now I'm missing the T, sorry, ICE-T.
Rebecca, I have to interrupt just because you've used up your 10 minutes now, I believe. So this, do you have an idea how much longer your presentation is? We can get a motion from
less than 1 minute. This is the last slide.
Okay, I'll just do a quick motion, look for a motion from council to extend your presentation allotment for a couple of minutes, I guess, until you're finished. So moved by Councillor Sloman, second by Councillor Sawyer. Anyone opposed? Okay, you may continue.
Thank you, and my apologies. Just that we have also requested a letter of support for ICE-T application, and I understand that the letter of support would be very specific to that grant application if it were granted. That's for support for the construction phase of the project. And then if you're wondering how else you could support this regional legacy project, it's really in gaining that support from the province. So expressing your excitement about the project to Minister Osborne is helpful, as our MLA, as well as other provincial contacts. And I hope that I could share an update with Nyla perhaps before UBCM in case there's any updates that we could share. Just wanted to say thank you for your time. I'm happy to answer any questions about the CBT or follow up personally. I appreciate your time for the update, as well as your consideration of the letter of support and the board appointment later on the agenda.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Hurwitz. Amazing report, amazing work as always. I had no idea that you distributed so much in grant funding. That's great. Questions from councillors? No? Okay, well, thank you for that and keep up the good work.
Thank you very much.
Okay, great. Encourage anyone watching to have a look at the Biosphere Trust annual report. Okay, moving on with the agenda. We have Tla-o-qui-aht Biosphere Trust request for a letter of support to apply for Island Coastal Economic Trust funding. That's what Executive Director was just mentioning. And if council wishes to do that, I do have a draft letter of support request motion that I'll move. So I'll move from the chair that staff be authorized to draft a letter of support for the Tla-o-qui-aht Biosphere Trust grant application to Island Coastal Economic Trust to support the Tla-o-qui-aht Sound Biosphere Center, to be signed by the mayor. Second by Councillor McMaster. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion is carried. And the next item on our agenda is Tofino Destination Stewardship. And we have a report of community services and tourism Tofino, Ms. Vermont and Mr. Purcell.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Just wait till the slides are up there, and the title on the agenda should actually read Destination Stewardship Plan. Plan.
Oh.
Yeah, the agenda there. Today I'll be co-presenting with Brad Purcell, who's the Executive Director of Tourism Tofino, with an update for Council's information on the Destination Stewardship Plan. This will be familiar to Council, previously seen in staff's work plan as a tourism master plan. Thank you. So the purpose of today's presentation is to outline a preliminary timeline and work plan process for the development of the plan. And this document would renew or in fact replace the 2014 Tofino Tourism Master Plan, which is our existing document. The process and resulting plan would distill a community vision for what is still undeniably Tofino's primary industry, which is tourism. This document will help guide Tourism Tofino and district strategies, policies, and projects related to tourism. And as a little bit of further background, Council will probably recall that in 2014, the district did develop a tourism master plan. It was the district's first tourism master plan and was in fact the first community-based tourism master plan in the province. It was developed concurrently with the Vision to Action, our integrated community sustainability plan. You may know that plan as the V2A, and it aligned with that plan in its priorities and focus areas. Now, 10 years later, many of those projects have been completed. Some of those projects have been determined to be no longer relevant. Tofino's tourism industry is in a very different place than it was 10 years ago. And of course, the world around us is very different as well. New priorities, legislation, and focuses for tourism have emerged that were not considered during the original plan. For example, DRIPA, and of course, a better understanding of our infrastructure challenges here in Tofino as well. 10 years later, the role of the DMO has also changed from being a destination marketing organization, which is really primarily focused on generating demand, to being organizations that are more invested in the stewardship of the destination. It is proposed that this plan would in fact be a destination stewardship plan rather than a tourism master plan, and would align with other district planning documents, for example, the official community plan, and consider best practices from other destinations as well that are leading in sustainability. With that, I'm going to pass it over to Brad to talk a little bit more about the destination stewardship plan and the process to get there.
Awesome. Well, thanks, April, and good afternoon, Acting Mayor and Council. Thanks for having me. So yeah, to continue on with the discussion, really the ambition from a staff perspective anyway, and I put a big caveat around a lot of this because this could evolve as we get into it, but to really look at this as with a really long lens and, you know, sort of asking the question of the community, what sort of tourism industry do you want your grandchildren to inherit here in Tofino? What does it look like? That will mean that the plan will be developed in a slightly different way, more as like an OCP document, a shared vision or policy guidance document, as opposed to a sort of a to-do list of quick action items that we can check off, which was a lot what the last plan looked like. And I just put that little graphic there, you know, when you're thinking about making plans, think big, but when you're actually making progress, you sort of chip away at it. The plan won't be set in stone. It'll be a living plan that can be updated with OCP engagement likely, but you know, as other emerging things happen. So it's not set in stone, it can evolve. And I think it's important to acknowledge that this is going to run alongside other new planning processes that are going to be happening at the So obviously the big one being the zoning bylaw rewrite, as well as the limits to growth policy. So we'll be, interacting with those plans and making sure that everything's aligned with the destination stewardship plan. And then this plan would sit over the top of, so it's not like we don't do tourism planning in Tofino, we do a lot of it. We have a 5-year MRDT renewal, so Tourism Tofino does a 5-year strategic plan. The OCP is updated typically every 5 years. There's a 3-year resort development strategy tied to the RMI funding. There is obviously council changes every 4 years, and there's council strategic priorities that are set. And we both have our annual tactical plans and our annual budgets as well. So this is designed to sort of sit over the top of all of those other sort of tourism planning processes. It will all be based on engagement. There's going to be tons of engagement. That's what this whole process is going to be about. And I did want to sort of start by saying that it's not like we're starting with a blank piece of paper. Like we've never asked the community about tourism before. There's been lots of engagement over the years, so I don't just want to throw all of that out. We want to look to a lot of the engagement that touches on tourism, like from the OCP process, for example. You could say in some ways that I've been informally doing engagement for this project since November 2022 when I moved here, and I've tried to have coffees and conversations with a lot of people in our community. Many of you in this room have been gracious enough to give me your time. And so a lot of that is going to inform how we structure the engagement. But we're going to want to engage on sort of broad areas like, the economic impact of tourism, jobs, and the economy and thriving businesses. Obviously, the environment, the footprint that the tourism industry has on the environment in the region, as well as social and cultural considerations, housing, all of those kinds of things. So it's all kind of connected. The planning process, as I said, extensive engagement, multiple rounds I'll touch on in a second, and multiple formats. So each of these sort of 5 major streams of engagement will all have different activities and perhaps look and feel a bit different. So I think there's a real opportunity first and foremost to center Indigenous values and perspective in the new tourism master plan, which was, if I'm honest, a little lacking in the 2014 one. Obviously, the residents of Tofino are another massive area of engagement, with the people that live here and are impacted by our industry. This will actually kick off an annual resident sentiment survey that we do as Tourism Tofino to actually track officially sort of sentiment in the community towards tourism. Obviously, the businesses of Tofino, partner organizations, primarily our organization, your organization, and others, including CBT, Parks Canada, and a bunch of others. And then finally, visitors to Tofino themselves. What do they want to see in the destination moving forward? I put this up somewhat reluctantly, but I'm going to map out like a little bit of a timeline. Again, this is obviously subject to change, but this isn't something we're going to throw together in 3 months and put a bow on it and we're done. This is going to be quite a process that's going to go on for the better part of 18 months. So kicking off this summer, we'll talk about the need for a consultant, how we're going to hire that consultant in a second. And then moving into this fall, where we review all of the existing plans and research, the vision to action document, the OCP. Tourism Tofino is in the process of updating all of our market research at the moment, which we haven't done since before the pandemic. So there'll be a lot of fresh input into the plan, and then designing engagement. Then we move into that first round of engagement, summarizing that initial engagement, identifying themes, and starting to develop a draft plan sort of this time next year. Then taking that draft plan out for a second round of engagement in fall of 2025, revising a final round of engagement. And then the ambition would be to launch the plan in the spring of 2026. Which puts us actually right at the doorstep of the next MRDT renewal in Tofino. So this plan would then inform, we would get to work that summer on renewing the MRDT and the 5-year strategic plan for Tourism Tofino based on the outcome of this process. The current MRDT is out on 1st of June 2027. And then of course, like any plan, then we implement, monitor, and revise as needed. Thanks. April mentioned best practices, and we're certainly, while we were a leader in BC, we're certainly not the only destination on earth that's thought about destination planning, and there's some really great examples out there that we're currently collecting to sort of help inform this plan, and I've highlighted a few of them on the slide deck. You can look these up online. Certainly these aren't the be-all end-all of destination plan, but I think there's some really cool stuff from Queenstown, New Zealand. Their regenerative tourism plan, which was just published last year. I had the opportunity to learn a bit about it on a trip earlier this year, and their kind of keystone project, the galvanizing project in that plan, or the big sort of hairy, audacious goal of that plan is to decarbonize the tourism industry in Queenstown completely by 2030, which is incredibly bold and incredibly audacious, and they're doing a lot of work around rapid decarbonization and achieving that carbon zero. The Netherlands, I think, has a really cool destination plan as well, you know, with strategic actions like you'd expect in a plan, but also mapping out the conditions for success. What is the sort of regulatory environment, the surrounding conditions around the plan, you know, and enable to accelerate those strategic actions. Some interesting stuff in there. Closer to home, probably one of the more impressive destination plans I've seen in BC in recent years was Revelstoke, who published theirs last year, and that is a 50-year plan. Their big sort of audacious goal that galvanized the community is everyone who is in Revelstoke to build community will have adequate housing, and that was really like the center of what they thought they needed in their destination. So lots of different cool examples, all that to say to draw on and to inform the new Tofino iteration. In terms of sort of the financial impact and sort of how it's going to look and feel, so you know the District of Tofino and Tourism Tofino are going to collaborate and leading this project. Tourism Tofino has set a tentative budget of $150,000 for the project. And that funding is to be taken from previous year's MRDT surplus. And, you know, it's obvious, but worth noting that destination planning is an eligible use of MRDT. So this plan will be funded by the visitor to Tofino and not by the resident of Tofino. Outside of that, there's really no budget impact to the District of Tofino other than obviously staff time. You know, at various points, the district staff will be pulled in for engagement. It's like that. I mentioned the need to have a consultant. We certainly hired a consultant in 2014 when we did the plan. In fact, it was the same consultant we used in Fernie when I did the tourism master plan in Fernie as well. And that same consultant actually recently did the Euclid plan, so they're very familiar with that process. But obviously we'll need a consultant for their expertise and also for capacity. We don't really have the capacity on either organization to deliver on our own. The District of Tofino and Tourism Tofino will run an RFP competitive bid process over the summer to award the contract to a qualified consultant. And the goal is to try to have that consultant selected, contracted, and onboarded as we come into the fall so we can really hit the ground running. And I've already mentioned that we are updating all of our marketing research to feed into this project at the moment as well. So that is pretty much it from April and I. We're happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Okay, I'll open it up to council for questions or comments, I guess. Hearing none. Mayor Law, don't have your hand up either. Okay, well, thank you. I guess we look forward to see the process unfold, and I look forward to participating in on the district end too.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Next item is 10.2. And this is a temporary use permit renewal for 691 Industrial Way. We have our report from Mr. Thick.
Good afternoon, Chair Anderson, Mayor and Council. Just going to see if I can find the advance or should I ask? Let's hopefully that will work. Let's try. We'll see if this works. I might need some assistance. Some call. But we'll get started here. I have a very brief presentation regarding the temporary use permit application that was part of the council's agenda package for the property at 691 Industrial Way. Right. Brief background, the application was received on April 25th of this year. There is the existing use, which is the use of basically the property or a specific section of the property for a mobile food vendor operating out of a trailer, has been occurring by a TUP that was issued June 22nd of 2021. Renewal of this TUP is permitted as per section 497 of the Local Government Act. And the proposal is really to just continue the existing use. There'd be no proposed changes to the TUP. We're just renewing the initial TUP. So there's the locations, 691 Industrial Way, also the location of the Tofino Brewery, or Tofino Brewing Company, and the approximate area of the trailers within the yellow square on that image. We'll quickly through some somewhat relevant policy. We've talked a little bit about temporary use permits over the past few meetings. So I'm sure council is aware that because these are temporary uses, they don't always necessarily completely line up with our OCP policy. However, that policy does give us some good general direction. We're trying to consider how we should approach these applications. So when we look at some of the economic development policies within the OCP, really does recognize tourism as a key economic driver in this town. There's lots of support for small businesses, and there's also support for the development of restaurant space. However, we're also looking at the specific industrial designation. One of the things that sort of sticks out with this particular application is that pure retail and commercial uses are generally not supported in the industrial designation. We're looking to retain that land as for industrial use primarily. However, we may allow it as a temporary use. Just what we consider this afternoon. So taking a kind of a more specific look at our TUP policy within the official community plan, we sort of try to establish this framework so we have a bit more of an objective approach to evaluating these applications. Balancing public and private interests, the applicant will benefit from financial benefits of operating the business, community benefits from having another desirable option for food, kind of benefits overall our small local economy. Minimal impact on the environment. There's really no alteration to building or clearing of any new space. There's really no anticipated impact on the environment from the extension of this TUP renewal, I should say. And it does generally achieve a level of compatibility with the surrounding development. It's a fairly small space that we're talking about here. There's really only kind of one other fully commercial operation that I'm aware of in Industrial Way. It's also operating under temporary use permit currently, but many of the other industrial uses do have retail aspects to them. So there's not really, it's not a typical industrial use that we're considering. However, it's not completely out of character with the surrounding development. And as far as the short-term land use, opportunity, economic diversification, innovation, bridge to permanent change of use, it's really not actually a viable bridge to a permanent change of use as is being proposed. As I noted earlier in the presentation, the OCP doesn't support kind of restaurants, pure commercial uses there. However, it may provide, often we do use temporary use permits essentially as business incubators. So we're giving young entrepreneurs an opportunity to sort of a low stakes way to start a business. Viable. They now have 3 years essentially to find a more permanent location or to alter their business plan so that it may fit in with the industrial designation. So from staff's perspective, it is a reasonable short-term land use opportunity, provides an innovative approach to starting a desirable business, and may, although probably not on the same property, but may serve as a bridge to some sort of a permanent business in the community. The existing zoning is M1, that's Industrial Park District. Take-out food vendors, mobile food vending, kind of thing we're considering is not permitted use in this zone. And so this TUP renewal will be required for the business to continue operating as it currently is. A few other considerations, parking. There's 4 spaces that are reserved within the brewery parking lot. The brewery has more than adequate parking as determined by our zoning bylaw. So those excess spaces are being used to be essentially reserved for the parking for this use. Access to the brewery washrooms is also being provided, and there's several bright bike racks that have been installed to support kind of alternative transportation. Safety, so this is for primarily fire safety, but we usually with any TUP renewal or any new TUP, we host a new inspection with the fire chief, as well as bylaw to ensure that all safety measures that are required under the TUP are being followed. Continued business license issuance will be contingent on Island Health approval. The hours of operation, again, we're just maintaining the existing temporary use permit. So the hours of operation by the TUP are actually permitted to be between 12 and 9 p.m. But according to the operators, the owners and the operators, they are likely to be only open from 1 to 8 p.m. No significant servicing impacts expected. We're not adding any washrooms or anything like that. This is a fairly small trailer. So although we are very concerned about water, this is not a situation that we expect to add significant load to our infrastructure capacity. There's currently a $1,000 security. We would just be maintaining that security. And there are letters of support that have been attached to the council package. I think those are Appendix 3. I think there was 5 letters of support provided. However, there were no other comments received following notification, which was our standard notification procedures as per the Local Government Act and our development approvals file. The recommendation is that the TUP be approved, or I guess we could also say renewed for a period of 3 years. Alternatives are below there, that it could be denied or that it could be approved for a shorter period of time should council see that necessary. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Thanks.
Okay, first we'll take an opportunity for if there's any questions on the report or presentation of Mr. Thick. Okay, hearing none, thank you, Mr. Thick, and we'll consider the recommendations laid before us. First off, is there any comments from councillors? Okay, oh, sorry.
I just want to say I'd like to see us definitely give them 3 years because I live nearby and I work in the industrial area and they're a huge asset to the area.
Okay. My only comment is that I do like to see a food use in conjunction with whatever alcohol serving permissions. I think it's good. It's unfortunate in a sense that this may be the last 3-year extension if it's approved by council. Because that's the limit of our temporary use permit renewals available.
Absolutely.
Oh,
Sorry, there was a hand from Mayor Law, but
sorry, Mayor Law, did you have your hand up? Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. No, I was just, I had a hard time hearing Councillor Thomas' comment. It sounded like a recommendation for 2 years, but then it sounds like it's a 3-year recommendation. That was my question for clarity.
Okay. So it was 3, Mayor Law. Okay. All right, I'll ask a member of council if they could move the recommendation then.
Sure.
Okay.
I move that the temporary use permit attached as Appendix 1 to the report titled Food Vendor Temporary Use Permit Renewal 691 Industrial Way dated June 25th, 2024 be approved for issuance for a period of 3 years.
Second, I think Councillor Master beat you by an error there. Any further comments? All in favor? Motion is carried. And item 10.3, we have a temporary use permit for 625 Nielsen Place. And Mr. Thick again has a presentation.
So again, Chair Anderson, Mayor and Council, this is another very similar presentation for a temporary use permit for the property at 625 Nielsen Place. This application regards the continuation of legal non-conforming use. I believe it was spoken to by the applicant earlier this meeting. Pardon me, a brief background on this particular application. It was received on April 2nd this year. The use of nightly rentals in general were historically permitted by a zoning, then by a legal non-conforming status after the current property zoning was adopted in February 2024. This is a situation that I think council is well aware of, but the applicants did apply to change their zoning. The zoning amendment was adopted in February 2024. They were hoping to continue operating nightly rentals via legal non-conforming status, and that status was lost as of May 1st due to the provisions of Provincial Bill 35. The applicants would like to continue this use via TUP. And it's worth noting that they've also submitted a zoning amendment to allow the use potentially long-term should council see fit to move that forward as well. The location of the property is shown in the blue outline on the screen right now. So it's basically at the corner of Nielsen and Pacific Rim Highway. And as we start to move through some of the policy here, again, official community plan provides some good general direction, but we are considering a temporary use in this particular situation. So the most relevant aspects of the official community plan encompass housing. So we really have several policies that look to restrict and discourage short-term rental uses in residential zones. Nightly rentals are generally not considered a priority use. So adding a nightly rental use to a zone that does not have that permission already is not something that the OCP is in favor of or recommending. It usually quite strongly discourages. From an economic development standpoint, tourism is a key economic driver in this town. There's generally support for small businesses and home-based businesses that do not negatively impact the character of residential neighborhoods. So there's a little bit of tension there between kind of economic development and housing. However, in general, staff consider that the policies around housing, particularly looking to curtail short-term rental and nightly rental uses within residential zones, are a little bit stronger than the support for small businesses in development policies. The subject properties within the village designation, development here, especially dense residential and mixed use typologies, is encouraged. However, the proposed use is not really considered a priority. So adding additional nightly rental permissions, even within the village area, is not something that's well supported within that land use designation. Taking a look at the temporary use permit policy, this is again the specific policy within our official community plan that we use to consider temporary use permit applications. The applicant will benefit from increased financial benefits from being able to operate nightly rentals under the temporary use permit. Public interest slightly less well represented. However, this will be a contributing factor to the overall tourism economy here in Tofino. Has minimal impact on the environment. There is really no anticipated impact on the environment. This isn't going to be something that requires additional lot clearing or adding any particular buildings to the property. Achieves the level of compatibility with the surrounding development. In general, there are numerous short-term rental operations on Nielsen Place, as well as in other areas of the village land use designation. So it's actually is reasonably compatible with the surrounding development. One of the challenges staff find though is, the last kind of row there, providing for short-term land use opportunity, economic diversification, innovation, bridge to permanent change of use. Well, it could be considered a short-term land use opportunity. It's not very well supported in guiding documents. It's very unlikely to serve as a bridge to a permanent use. As noted, the applicants have submitted a zoning amendment application to permanently add this permission back to the property. However, under current OCP direction, it's unlikely that staff would be supportive of that application. There's not really a significant economic diversification or innovation that's being proposed here either. So a little bit weaker kind of in the last line of the TUP policy chart. Zoning, talk about zoning for just a few minutes, although I know council is fairly well aware of the situation. So there was a recent zoning amendment that was adopted in February of 2024, changed the property zoning from the existing RA3, which did have nightly rental permissions, to the Nielsen Place Comprehensive Development Zone. The applicants through that process voluntarily gave up their nightly rental permissions. However, they were continuing nightly rentals under legal non-conforming permissions, as was I think understood to be their intention all along. However, this permission was removed by the province as per Bill 35. It's worth noting that the District of Tofino has not changed any bylaws, and we have not changed any aspects of our business licensing. That this permission removal of legal non-conforming is actually entirely under the province's jurisdiction. We have no ability to add legal non-conforming privileges to a property or take them away. That's something that's done at an entirely different level of government. A few other considerations here worth mentioning. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about kind of the timeline. So staff really through the latter half of the zoning amendment, kind of fall of 2023 into the winter spring of 2024, staff really received no indication from the applicant that they were concerned with Bill 35. Despite the time gap between royal assent, that's the signing of Bill 35 into law, which was at the very end, I believe, October 27th, 2023. There was a public statement made by the district, read by Mayor Law, talking about the loss of legal non-conforming status towards the end of November of 2023. Second and third readings, at that point in time, the bylaw had only reached first reading. Second and third readings were completed in December of 2023, and adoption was completed in February of 2024. So there was a fairly significant gap there. Staff understand that the applicants were unaware of the consequences of Bill 35 to their overall development plan. However, we received no kind of indication that they were interested in slowing the process down during that period of time. Just worth mentioning housing, again, OCP was looking to curtail night rentals in residential zones, generally supports any efforts to encourage long-term housing and to avoid turning what could be long-term housing into nightly rentals. And then the last point there is just about our general engagement process. So we followed requirements of the Local Government Act and our relevant bylaws. Really, we only received 2 emails that were just looking for clarification, trying to understand what the situation was a little bit more, but that was about all that staff received in response. So a brief summary. So the applicant has requested a 3-year temporary use permit to continue operating a 2-bedroom bed and breakfast that was previously a legal non-conforming use. I think it's worth just kind of clarifying this because previously under the RA3 zone, they had kind of wide open nightly rental permissions. Under the legal non-conforming use, that wide open nightly rental permissions was confined to a 2-bedroom bed and breakfast that operates out of the main house on the property. And they're just looking to restore that. They're not looking for complete nightly rental permissions to be restored to the property. However, despite that, staff still recommend denying due to the general lack of nightly rental permissions on the property. It's been my understanding, at least, that the last time that the District of Tofino added nightly rental permissions to a property that didn't explicitly have nightly rental permissions was 2011, and I believe that was the Tibbs building. So it's been over a decade since the district has actually added these permissions to a property that didn't have zoning that already had them. And there's general lack of support in the OCP for adding these permissions to zones that don't have them, as I noted, and really kind of uncertainty about the long-term viability of the proposal. This is not necessarily a clear path to conformance in the future. So with that, the staff recommendation is on the board there. There's the alternatives down below. If there's any questions, I'm more than happy to.
Okay. Oh, thank you, Mr. Thick. Is there any questions from members of council? Councillor Sawyer.
Question for clarity, if I could just, I think I read in the report there. So the property was only operating as a bed and breakfast for a short period of time. And prior to that, it was short-term rental.
Thanks for the question. Through the chair, that's correct. I'll offer my understanding, acknowledging that the applicants aren't in the room right now to speak to this directly, but from my conversations with the applicants, how that kind of evolved. Initially, they have a caretaker's cottage and a main house on the property. My understanding was up until kind of January of 2024, they were operating the main house as a short-term rental, entirely as a short-term rental. As they decided to move towards adoption of the zoning bylaw, they changed that license to be a bed and breakfast in the main house, so a 2-bedroom bed and breakfast from a 3-bedroom short-term rental. The rationale for that is that they are also in a subdivision process, and should that subdivision be successful, which it likely will be over the next year, however long it takes for them to complete that, it would separate the existing 2 structures on the property. One would be on one lot, one would be on the other. And that would negate their ability to operate a short-term rental. So they chose to switch to a bed and breakfast prior to the zoning being adopted, so that would be protected under legal status. And then following that, even if they were completing the subdivision, they would still be able to maintain that legal non-conforming status. However, obviously that's been changed as of May 1st. So I understand that's a little bit of a complex kind of development process, but hopefully that gives a little bit of an understanding of sort of the intention that was put forward.
Does that satisfy your question?
Yes, I think it does. I was curious about the structure of the areas being used for the bed and breakfast and how that would possibly come into compliance with our current bylaws.
Okay.
Thank you.
Questions for Mr. Thick? Councillor Sloan.
Yeah, I was just reading under our definition of bed and breakfast, the operator must continue to reside in the dwelling. Can you clarify the operator?
Sure, yeah, thanks for the question. For the chair, the operator is typically the person who holds the business. So they're technically the person that should be kind of administrating the operation.
Any other questions from council members? Okay, thanks for your presentation, Mr. Thick. Okay, we have a recommendation presented by staff with some options for council to consider as well. And I'd like to get a sense of where councillors are at. So if any councillor wants to volunteer comments to start. Councillor Mayor Law.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just I just want to express at the beginning that my experience sitting on council as this rezoning application went through, the original rezoning application, not this TUP, but the application that ended with where we are today, was a much different experience than what the applicants have conveyed in letters and in their presentation. Personally, I through the application process for the rezoning, I was fully under the impression that the applicants were voluntarily giving up short-term rental permissions for these properties so that they could subdivide. And I did review all of the meetings and all of the reports, and there was no indication in the reports or in the presentations that the applicants had intended, fully intended, and in fact, as they say, required a continuation of their nightly rental operation. So just from my perspective, it was quite a shock to find out that was in fact not the case, that they did not intend to give up short-term rental permissions, bed and breakfast permissions. So I just want to say that right out, straight up, that my experience of this the rezoning was much different than presented by the applicants, and that I would find it very difficult to backtrack and then rezone short-term rental permissions back into a property. Partly because I'm not sure that council would have allowed a rezoning of the properties had short-term rentals been in that mix. I was fully under the impression that they would be removed, as the report's second and third reading very clearly stated. So that's my comment to start up, just to perhaps give an alternative perspective than the applicants have given.
Councillor McMaster.
Yeah, I'm of a similar vein. When the rezoning was considered, the key component for me was the fact that we're giving up nightly rentals. And and I know when we came to discuss Bill 35, we deliberated on a lot of things, and it was a hard decision. And I think now, faced with a hard decision, I think we've got to stick to our guns.
Okay. Councillor Sloman.
I agree with these two that that was the way it was presented to me, as well as that they were giving up the short-term rental permissions, but it seems like they were maybe misunderstanding what was taking place. And so I would be in favor of issuing a temporary use permit because they have applied. They are providing 2 more housing units, and it's still a living situation, so it wouldn't necessarily be losing a dwelling.
Okay. Councillor Thomas, did you have any comment?
I had the same shared experience as everyone else around the table, and I would be supporting the staff's recommendation on this one.
Okay, Councillor Sawyer, any comment?
I would support staff's recommendation because we generally issue temporary use permits to allow someone to come into compliance with their zoning. However, this would not be reaching that goal, and the applicant had previously given up their short-term rental permissions when they subdivided. So making progress towards regaining those short-term rental permissions, I don't feel aligns with the OCP.
Okay. This is a very difficult one for me because I'm very sympathetic with the applicant's request and seeming misunderstanding. However, it's the request that's before us, given the direction that council has been going and all of the decisions that have been falling into place and as staff's report points out, and as council members have pointed out, the decision was on the zoning was taken with the understanding that there would be no short-term rental uses permitted on the property anymore. So I would also support staff's recommendation, although I would I would love to be able to think otherwise. But the decisions that I've supported leading up to this point would be contrary to where I've been going with my support. So I would also support the staff recommendation. So
Yeah, I'll move the staff recommendation that the temporary use permit attached as Appendix 1 to the report titled TUP 0424-625 Nielsen Place continuation of LNG use dated June 25, 2024 be considered and denied.
is there a second? Second, Councillor Sawyer. Any discussion, debate on the motion? Councillor Sawyer.
I will just add a comment to echo your statements that, you know, there is compassion towards community members that are going through these things right now, and we're acting as best we can within the OCP, and but that we do realize it's a hard decision.
Okay, seeing no other hands up, I'll call the question. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion is carried. Let's find my place again.
Parking amendments.
Yep. Okay, the next item is 10.4 parking amendments. And we have a report from Infrastructure and Public Works, Mr. Rogers.
I don't have a report today for council. I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay.
I'm happy to move the recommendation.
Okay, did you want a question first?
Yeah, I had a question. Do trailers need to be connected to a vehicle in them?
Not necessarily. As long as they're being paid for, then it will be okay with it, but we're also okay if they are connected.
Yeah, follow up.
Can regular sized vehicles also take advantage of that longer time slot in that parking lot?
It's likely that we're gonna restrict it to truck and trailer or RVs just because of the limited amount of space we have for those elsewhere in town, and the fact that these are larger spots, and so might be able to accommodate some of the vehicles that we can't accommodate on the road.
Thank you.
Councillor Thomas?
Through the chair, what is the additional cost to us for this? Do we need to put in another kiosk in? Is there additional fees to Robbins? I didn't see that addressed.
Great question, thank you, Councillor Thomas. We are going to relocate an existing kiosk that's not being well utilized, so we won't be paying for an additional kiosk. This is going to be within the existing contract we have with Robbins, and so we'll be paying the 5.5% fee, but within the existing contract.
Yeah, that satisfies my concerns.
And Councillor Sawyer, question.
I just had a question for clarity that I may have missed. How will we address the fact that we may have RVs camping there with people living in them or staying in them for the 24-hour slots?
That's a great question. We deal with the same way that we deal within, say, the lots out here, so we can patrol those lots. Robin will patrol those lots, so we control sleeping in RVs or cars through a different bylaw, rather than parking. So we deal with it the same way we deal with elsewhere in the community.
Follow up. If I may, just being very aware that I think that, you know, given that we're enforcing very stringently in the summer, just to be fair to everyone, that we're not creating a campground.
Will there be signage that indicates that this is no camping here? I'm hoping that will come along.
We will ensure that there's the right type of signage there to deter that type of
I
behavior.
hope that's abundantly clear. Okay, if there's no further questions, Councillor McMaster, we're prepared to
Move that District of Tofino Traffic and Parking Regulation Amendment Bylaw number 1091/10/2024 be introduced and read a first, second and third time.
Is there a second? Second, Councillor Sawyer. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor? Motion is carried.
I move that the District of Tofino Fees and Charges Amendment Bylaw number 1271/10/24 be introduced and read a first, second and third time.
Second, again by Councillor Sawyer. Any discussion on that? All in favor? Motion is carried. And section 11 bylaws, we have a number of bylaws that are up for their final reading adoption. So I'll move these from the chair and I'll look in a second and we'll vote on each one. 11.1. All right, I'll move the District of Tofino Amendment Bylaw number 1326/2023 be adopted. Second by Councillor Thomas. Any discussion? All in favor? It's carried. Next, I'll move that District of Tofino Water Utility Bylaw number 1346 be adopted. Second by Councillor McMaster. Any discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. And third one, I'll move that District of Tofino Sewer Utility Bylaw number 1347/2024 be adopted. Second by Councillor Sloman. Discussion. All in favor? Motion is carried. And that brings us to reports and business initiated by councillor members. And then a councillor member that has Councillor Sloman and then Councillor McMaster.
So today I went to the Tourism Tofino board meeting and we received the same presentation we received today. But also of note is the scholarships from Tourism Tofino. The scholarship committee gave out their scholarships. So there's 4 of them. 2 $7,000 ones and 2 $3,000 ones were presented by Kathy Thick on behalf of Tourism Tofino to students of Q&amp Secondary School.
Great. Thank you. Councillor McMaster.
Yeah, a week ago, I attended a community housing forum in Oceanside, which is Parksville, Qualicum. I originally attended incognito as a member of the public, but then George Johns appeared and blew my cover. So it was quite interesting to talk about homeless solutions in Oceanside. And one thing I thought that might be of interest to Tofino was a scheme which is known as Happy Pad. And basically, this is run throughout Canada, and it's an organization that screens renters and screens landlords. So often it's primarily used by people who have lost a partner and may have a room spare to rent, who are often nervous about renting to someone they don't know or even collecting rent. Well, the organization screens the prospective renters, screens the landlords and tries to pay them up, collects the rent from the tenant, then pays the landlord. and any disputes, the organisation steps in and sorts it out. So if they have to get someone out, it's not the, poor old lady or little old pensioner trying to get rid of them, the organisation does. So I think I tried to suggest something like this when I first got on council, and there wasn't much interest because I'd seen it work in Alberta, but now there's an organisation that does it, and I think there might be some application in Tofino because there's some people that do have spare rooms, they don't want to do vacation rentals, and they're wary about the Landlord Tenancy Act. So I talked to Nyla this afternoon as to whether we should pass this on to staff or whether the Housing Corporation should look into it. So we sort of agreed that the Housing Corporation would be a good vehicle. So I'll talk to our director and I'll report back to council and see how it goes.
Thanks. That sounds interesting. And a good place to bring that discussion to. Any other reports from council members? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to question period, and I'll ask Mr. McCall to make a call if there's anybody on Zoom or signed up for question period on agenda items.
Thank you, Chair Anderson. I will now do an open call for question period. So if there's anyone here in the gallery or online wishing to make a question on any agenda item, do so now by raising your hand. You'll need to say your name, your address, and the agenda item you're speaking to. I'll now do a call going once, going twice, going 3 times. There are no more questions.
Okay. So we will now move to our closed session, and I'll move from the chair that the meeting be closed to the public pursuant to section 91A(c) of the community charter to discuss matters relating to 91A, personal information about an identifiable individual who holds or is being considered for a position as officer, employee, or agent of the municipality or other position appointed by the municipality, and C, labor relations or other employee relations. Yeah. Is there a second by Councillor Thomas? All in favor? We'll now move to our closed session, and I'll call a 5-minute recess before we begin.
I'll mute the mics.